Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Tonight, we are bringing you a detailed breakdown of what many analysts are already describing as one of the most consequential developments of the autumn-winter phase of the Ukraine conflict. In the last 24 hours, events have unfolded that could significantly reshape the strategic situation in southern Ukraine and across the Black Sea region. This report focuses on two closely connected developments. First, Russia's confirmed use of Onyx anti-ship cruise missiles against ground targets in Ukraine. Second, the unusually direct and uncompromising public remarks delivered by President Vladimir Putin shortly after those strikes. Together, these actions have triggered intense reactions not only in Kyiv, but also in Washington, Brussels, Ankara, and other major capitals. To understand why this moment matters, we need to examine exactly what happened, how it happened, and why it may mark a turning point. The night of December 13th into December 14th began with a little indication that anything unusual was about to occur. Conditions over the Black Sea were stable, winds were light, visibility was high. To civilians, it appeared to be just another night in a conflict that has stretched on for nearly 2 years. Behind the scenes, however, military monitoring systems were fully active. According to statements from Russian military sources, intelligence units had been observing increased Ukrainian military activity in the southern regions for more than a day. Movements of equipment and supplies were reportedly detected in the directions of both Odesa and Mykolaiv. Ukrainian forces appeared to be repositioning assets closer to these cities, reinforcing defenses in anticipation of possible winter operations. Such maneuvers are not unusual. In wartime, forces regularly redeploy to strengthen vulnerable sectors. On their own, these movements did not signal an extraordinary development. What followed, however, was anything but routine. At approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, Russian tracking systems reportedly detected abnormal activity near the Skadovsk area. Within minutes, launch signatures were identified. Analysts monitoring flight paths and velocity data quickly reached a conclusion. These were Onyx-class missiles. This point is critical. The Onyx missile is not a standard cruise missile. It was designed specifically as an anti-ship weapon, intended to destroy heavily armored naval vessels. It travels at extreme speed. Estimates place it between Mach 2.5 and Mach 3, and carries a warhead weighing roughly half a ton. When such a weapon is employed against land targets, the consequences are severe. Until this strike, Ukrainian military officials and several Western analysts had publicly stated that the Onyx missile was unsuitable for effective use against ground targets. The prevailing view was that its guidance systems and flight profile made it impractical outside naval warfare. The events of December 13th directly challenged that assumption. According to Russian military statements, the first missile struck a military storage facility near the village of Kulindorovo, close to Odesa. The site reportedly contained military equipment and artillery ammunition supplied to Ukraine by the United States and Germany. The explosion was described as enormous. Residents in surrounding areas reported seeing a flash in the sky and a massive column of smoke. Russian sources claimed multiple secondary detonations, indicating the presence of stored ammunition. The facility itself was reportedly destroyed. The second missile struck a target in the Mykolaiv region. This location was described as a major logistics hub supplying Ukrainian units operating near the Dnieper River. Eyewitness reports and later Ukrainian acknowledgments indicated prolonged explosions at the site. Emergency services were unable to approach the area for several hours due to ongoing detonations and extreme heat. Such conditions strongly suggest the destruction of a large ammunition and fuel storage facility. As daylight arrived on December 14th, Ukrainian authorities issued initial statements attempting to minimize the impact of the strikes. Early reports suggested limited damage or successful air defense interception. As more evidence emerged, official messaging evolved. Later statements acknowledged secondary detonations and infrastructure damage, attributing the scale of destruction to stored ammunition rather than the missiles themselves. However, Analysts noted that the physical effects of an Onyx strike are difficult to conceal. Seismic vibrations were reportedly felt kilometers away. Residents in Odesa described sensations similar to an earthquake. Ukrainian military commentators, usually cautious in tone, expressed visible shock. Repeatedly, the same sentiment appeared online. The sound and impact were unlike anything previously experienced. That psychological impact is significant. Only hours after the strikes, as international media began reporting and NATO officials issued standard monitoring statements, President Vladimir Putin appeared at what was described as a closed meeting. Portions of his remarks were broadcast publicly. What he said immediately drew global attention. Putin stated, without diplomatic ambiguity, that Odesa and Mykolaiv are historically Russian cities. He declared that Russia would not allow these cities to be used as bases for attacks on Crimea, the Black Sea, or the Russian Black Sea Fleet. He further stated that facilities involved in preparing such attacks would be destroyed, without prior warning. The phrase that resonated worldwide was his warning that decision-makers must understand this was the last warning. World leaders typically rely on carefully calibrated language. They speak of consequences, responses, and options. Ambiguity is often intentional. Putin's remarks did not follow that pattern. This was a direct statement of intent. Analysts quickly labeled it an ultimatum. Whether one views it as a threat or a strategic declaration, the clarity was unmistakable. The timing was not accidental. The Onyx strikes were not just operational actions. They were demonstrations of capability. While Ukraine was clearly a target audience, many analysts believe Putin's primary message was directed at Western capitals. Odesa remains Ukraine's most important port. It is a central hub for receiving Western military aid. Beyond the current conflict, there have been discussions, unofficial but persistent, about future NATO infrastructure in the city. From Moscow's perspective, allowing Odesa to evolve into a NATO-aligned military hub would represent a strategic defeat in the Black Sea. Putin's message was explicit. This will not be allowed. While Odesa dominates headlines, military analysts are increasingly focused on Mykolaiv. The city hosts major industrial facilities used to repair and maintain Western-supplied armored vehicles and artillery. Its geographic position links Odesa with key supply routes along the Dnieper. Control of Mykolaiv would place Odesa in a vulnerable position, potentially isolating the city and compromising supply lines. Some analysts now believe any major southern offensive would target Mykolaiv first. Public responses from Washington and European capitals followed familiar patterns: condemnation, support for Ukraine, promises of additional air defenses. Privately, assessments appear more cautious. Defense analysts understand the technical difficulty of intercepting Onyx missiles. Even advanced air defense systems struggle against such speed and flight profiles. Germany has reportedly expressed concern about Ukraine's ability to counter systematic use of these weapons. Romania is preparing contingency plans, aware that escalation could trigger a refugee crisis. Poland is reassessing its regional security assumptions. Inside Odesa, residents described the night as one of the most frightening of the war. Air raid sirens reportedly sounded after the explosions. Buildings shook violently. Social media posts reflected a growing fear that defenses may not be sufficient. That loss of confidence has consequences far beyond physical damage. Based on current information, analysts outline several possibilities. Continued strikes on logistics and port infrastructure. Targeting of energy facilities. Attacks on repair hubs in Mykolaiv. Potential ground operations aimed at isolation rather than immediate capture. The timeline remains uncertain. Odesa is critical to global grain exports. Any disruption could affect food prices worldwide. Ukraine's economy would suffer further strain, increasing reliance on external aid. These factors weigh heavily on strategic decisions. The events of December 13th and 14th may be remembered as a turning point, not only because of the missiles used, but because of the message delivered afterward. Russia has clarified its red lines. Ukraine and its allies must now decide how to respond. The stakes are high, the risks enormous, and the path forward uncertain. We will continue to follow developments closely. Thank you for watching.